My name is Chinweizu. After my education at MIT and SUNY Buffalo, I decided to make my contribution to the problems of black people through journalism and research and education. And that's what I've been doing all of my life since then. As part of my contribution to the struggle of black people, I've written books like The West and the Rest of Us, which was my first book, published in 1975 by Random House. The editor who commissioned it was Toni Morrison. Another book of mine is called Decolonizing the African Mind. I've done other books in a collaboration with others, such as Toward Decolonization of African Literature. It's co-authored by me and two of my friends. I've done pamphlets like The Black World and the Nobel Prize. And my latest book from last year, 2015, is called Caliphate Colonialism, the Taproot of the Trouble with Nigeria. The title of the course is History of Pan-Africanism, Part 1. Part of my concern is that Pan-Africanism has been a grand failure in the century in which it has been organized. Most people don't realize that. But actually, of the projects that were outlined at the very beginning of Pan-Africanism, that's in 1900 when the conference was held in London that put the term Pan-Africanism in the dictionary. It has only achieved 21%, and that in anybody's book is not a pass mark. So first of all, Pan-Africanism has been a failure, and part of the intention is to examine why it has been a failure. So this is a History of Pan-Africanism course. It is the first of a set of sequenced courses that will go through that history from the 1440s when Pan-Africanism really began till today. And the intention is to take them stage by stage and see what was proposed, what was done, what was achieved, what was not achieved, and why or why not. One of the issues that will arise in the set of the courses is this issue of unity. Because African unity is like what we have come to regard as the most important or even the defining issue in Pan-Africanism. Mention Pan-Africanism, people will say, oh yes, African unity. Now we want to, let's briefly examine this concept of unity. The usual spiel is from the adage that unity is strength, or united we stand, divided we fall. Now, usually it is the case that unity is strength. But as America Cabral pointed out, there are kinds of union that promote weakness. And we need to be aware of that so that we don't just go around and say that, oh, any unity is fine. Now, there are those that produce weakness. There are those that produce confusion and incompetence. There are those that produce strength, but not enough for the task in hand. And there are tasks for which unity is totally irrelevant. If you face those kinds of tasks and keep looking for unity, you just go beating about the bush, going off track. So let me give you an example. The Cabral example of unity that produces strength is his broomstick example. He says if you take one piece of broomstick, you can easily break it. If you take two at a time, you can still break it, but it's not as easy as breaking one. If you take 3, 4, 5, it keeps getting increasingly harder to break till you get to a point where you can't break the bunch. So this was his famous illustration of the adage that unity is strength. Now, for unity that is not strength, that produces weaknesses, let's take the case of the chain. The saying is that the strength of the chain is that of the weakest link. Now, let's consider 3 types of chain. First, a stainless steel chain, very tough, very strong. and then a copper chain. Equally, it's also strong and difficult to break. Then a third chain, a paper chain, the type which you put around your neck and put flowers in to make a garland made out of paper. Now, if you take the steel chain, attach it to the paper chain, and at the other end attach the copper chain, you still have a chain. But the weakest link is the paper chain. So the combination gives you a chain that is only as strong as the paper chain. It's not as strong as the ones at the end. Now, if you unite them with water, for instance, so you have a chain of steel, paper, copper, and you put them in water in a basin, you still have a chain, but it's not even as strong as the paper chain, because the dry paper chain, because the paper will get soggy, and if you try to pull, it will disintegrate. So you have a kind of union that produces weakness when you take these kinds of chains and put them together. Another type of union that will produce weakness of a different kind is what I call the snails and the elephant. A bunch of snails in the forest, each of them is in this little hole or hideout, hiding behind a leaf or behind a clump of grass or behind a shrub. Elephant is moving through the forest. It can't kill them. At least if it steps on one by accident, it will crush that one. But suppose some clever snail comes and tells the other snails, unity is strength, come, let's gather together. Then you have a huge bunch of snails, and the elephant walking through will put his mortal legs on the heap and crush them. So there you have a kind of unity that produces, you lose safety by that unity. So it produces a weakness through lack of safety. Then let's consider the case of the kind of union that does not produce enough strength for the task in hand. Consider a tug of war match between a hefty giant, muscle-bound pumping iron on one side and 5 or 6 big midgets who are suffering from kwashiorkor, bloated belly, hungry, starving, malnourished, and very weak. Of course, when you put 2 of them together, you may have strength greater than that of each of them. But is that strength going to be enough to deal with to win the tug of war match against the pumping iron? Not likely. If you want them to win, you have to do more than worry about their union. You have to worry about, if you can take just one of them, feed him well, let him recover fully, and then go and pump iron to the point where he can deal with a healthy person. If you take 1 or 2 of them and put them together, you'll have a strength that might begin to challenge the pumping iron at the other end. So in this case, you have a union that will not produce enough strength to do with the job in hand. So we have to recognize that there are those kinds of union. Then the other kind of union is the one that's totally irrelevant to the task in hand. In the 19th century, there was a case like that. Ashanti was going to one of its wars with the British. And Ashanti appealed to Dahomey that they should form an alliance. And Dahomey said, no, we won't form an alliance with you because you are bound to lose. And they said that the oracle told them that he who makes the powder will win the war. You don't make the powder, so why should we join you in this struggle? So Ashanti fought and was defeated. About 20 years later, in the 1890s, the French attacked Dahomey. Dahomey had tried to get some more ammunition and armament, but he couldn't get what it needed because the Europeans had embargoed the sale of the most modern equipment, armaments, to the African countries. That embargo had been on even from the 1870s when Ashanti was trying to get Dahomey to join it. So Dahomey fought the French and got defeated. Now here was a case where union was irrelevant, because if they divided, they would fall. United, they would fall because they didn't make the powder. So when people give us, invite us to unity, we should begin to examine the kind of unity for the task in hand. One of the things we want to do in this course, that we will do as part of the course, is examine this concept of unity and use this kind of interrogation to find out, of all the kinds of union that have been proposed to us in the 20th century, which ones will produce strength. Will any of them produce enough of the strength we need? Which ones of them will produce weakness? And which ones of them are irrelevant? So, and we will take the same kind of analysis and interrogation to all the other ideas and projects that Pan-Africanism were introduced into Pan-Africanism in the 20th century. Because in the process, we can now find out why Pan-Africanism failed through this kind of detailed consideration of these projects and ideas. So this is what the course will be doing. And if you're interested in these questions, sign up for the course and let's go through all this together. Now these are the kinds of detailed consideration that we'll be doing in the course, not only to the concept of unity, but to the other projects and ideas that have been proposed in Pan-Africanism in the 20th century. And if we do that, we can then begin to see why Pan-Africanism in the 20th century was such a failure, achieving only 21% of what it set out to do. If you're interested in this kind of investigation, so we can correct the mistakes of Pan-Africanism, so that in the 21st century we can start producing victory rather than defeats, then join in this adventure. Go to Abibi2 Mikasa and sign up for the course.